auto component sector. It is one of the largest employers and definitely contributes to the largest in terms of the GDP.
Indian auto component industry or Indian MSME industry, it's a 3x increase in the export segment.
The auto industry is undergoing a huge change from IC engine to an EV engine.
EV, I would say it is at a very, very nascent stage. The brouhaha that is happening because of EV, it is yet to come.
When is the right time for an MSME to consider listing on the stock exchanges?
Listing is absolutely the way forward. The sooner you do it, better it is. China as an opportunity or as a threat?
If we are not going to make ourselves more competent, then definitely it will be a threat.
Welcome to yet another episode of Progress Mantras by Profectus Capital. Profectus Capital, which is an MSME-focused non-banking finance company, prides itself on helping MSMEs to grow in scale and size and towards a greater glory. Today's episode, we will cover one of the most important sectors in India, which is the auto component sector. Auto components, as you know, is a sector where India has built up huge core competencies. And our auto component sector is known for its innovation and its solid manufacturing capability and also very high focus upon quality. The objective of today's podcast would be to talk about the problems and prospects of the auto component sector and learn from the experiences of people who are practitioners in this segment so that we all can scale up our businesses and do something what we've always been doing much better tomorrow. We pick up the auto component sector today, which is one of the largest employers in the Indian economy and definitely contributes to the largest in terms of the GDP from a manufacturing perspective. We have the pleasure of having two very experienced professionals who understand the auto components industry very well. One of them has a manufacturing facility of his own, the other one who helps the others in scaling up, becoming much better in terms of manufacturing. The first guest that we have, I have the pleasure of presenting to you Mr. Aditya Gokarn, who actually needs very little introduction if you are a participant in the auto components market. His company, Triton Valves Limited, has been a very important player in this segment, and we would like to learn from Aditya what his experience in this industry has been. To give you a little bit of background, he is an engineer and also has got some management inputs from no less an university than University of California in Berkeley. He joined his business at a very ripe young age and became an ED at just 25. And over the past 22, 23 years, he's been spearheading the efforts towards converting Triton Valves into a market leader in its own right. Aditya, it's a true pleasure to have you with us today. Welcome to Progress Mantras from Profectus Capital.
Thank you. The pleasure is all mine. Thank you for having me.
And joining us today in this episode is also Mr. Alok Kumar Sahu, who's a co-founder and director of Tetrahedron Manufacturing Services. Mr. Sahu brings over 20 years of experience in the manufacturing segment. He is an engineer and also an MBA from IIM Calcutta. And over the past 20 odd years, he's helped more than 700 manufacturing entities to scale up and to reach greater heights in terms of manufacturing efficiency and quality. Welcome to our podcast, Mr. Sahu, and great to have you with us.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Profectus Capital, for having us here. It's a great pleasure.
Let's start by understanding Aditya's journey. Your father, Mr. Henry Gokarn, founded Triton way back in 1975. What was the inspiration behind him going into this sector? And what is the background and how did the initial years were?
My father was a mechanical electrical engineer. Those days, it was not uncommon to be dual qualified. So he grew up in a small town, Karwar, in coastal Karnataka. Went to College of Engineering, Pune, finished his bachelor's there. And then he went to England to do what was then called apprentice training, right? So worked in a lot of, I would say, British companies those days. And then when he came back to India, he got a job with a company called AEI. So AEI those days was like a British blue chip company making electrical equipment. He was posted in Calcutta. He was the youngest regional manager of the company at the age of just 32, right? So when he was in Calcutta, I think India was in this license Raj era. Entrepreneurship was not encouraged. You needed a license even to increase your capacity. And I think that kind of, that pinched him. He thought, this is not a good thing. Having trained so well, having, done so well in his career up to there, he felt that, he had to do something, he had to contribute something to the country. Also, I think he had a lot of exposure to know that, India had huge potential, a huge market, huge population, quality of life had to improve at some point of time. So he came in contact there with the Dunlop company. Dunlop was the only tire manufacturer those days. They had a factory in Shahganj. So he used to meet some of the top executives of Dunlop. And they used to tell him about, this little product called a tyre valve that they were struggling with because there was only one supplier in the market. And looking at his, passion and, his itch to become an entrepreneur, some of his friends said, hey, why don't you make this, because there's only one player in the market and we're struggling with quality. So maybe this is something that you could do. So I think that was the background in which he came up with the idea of Triton.
Very interesting. I mean, as you said, the tire valve is such a small little component. And how does that become such a critical piece?
See, the tire itself is kind of a safety critical component. And within the tire assembly, I think the valve becomes even more critical because ultimately the performance of a tire, its load bearing capacity, depends on how much air pressure is there inside the tire. So the valve is the little, little component which keeps the air sealed inside, and it literally holds up the entire weight of the vehicle. It's precision engineering, and in the 60s and 70s, very, very few companies knew how to make a precision component like this. So in that era, to make these very critical, high quality components in large numbers, in millions, defect free, it was something different.
What have you heard about your senior staff or from your family about how the initial years were? What sort of struggles that your dad had to go through, and how did he kind of overcome that? And what was the whole scenario like?
See, my father had a tremendous amount of energy. He was a very passionate, intense kind of a person. And the initial challenges were obviously, the technology itself, funding. I think in that era, for an entrepreneur to get funded was extremely difficult. I think that in that era, my mother always says that even the government viewed profit as something bad, right? It was kind of a socialist era where there was a dream that India should be a socialist egalitarian society. It was a very difficult thing to get licenses, right? So my father had to go to Delhi for every small little thing. So hard times, I would say. In that era, nobody in their right mind would leave a job like my father had in AEI. Beautiful bungalow. He had an ambassador car from the company. He had staff in his home. He had driver, cook. Leaving that kind of a lifestyle and jumping into the entrepreneurial fray, I think it's something that very, very few people would have done. So my father actually incorporated the company as a public company, which was quite rare in that era. Why did he do that? He actually believed, having worked in England, having seen some of these large British multinationals, he believed that in the long run, right, you needed to create a corporate structure, right? And he was ready to sacrifice his personal interest right at the start to build an institution, not just a tire valve company. So the vision was very, very deep, very futuristic. And then he listed the company within the first 3 years, which again in that era was considered like a minor miracle by itself. So over the years, we've moved from making valves for tires and tubes to making tubeless valves. And now, of course, there's TPMS. And our capacities have grown over the years. We started with a very small capacity. Today, we have a capacity in excess of 180 million valves per annum. And of course, we're going to be 50 years this year. It's our golden jubilee year. It's a story of determination, of overcoming odds, handling crises, and so that's our little story over the last 50 years.
Awesome. And from the time you entered the company till now, how has been the sales turnover been growing, and what's been the current scale right now?
The time that I joined in 2002, we were doing about 35 crores in sales. And we just announced our annual results last week. We've done about 490 crores now for FY25.
So 35 to 500 crores over 20 year period.
Yeah, over a 20 year.
15
over
times.
a 20,
roughly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very unfortunately, he passed away at a very premature age.
Yeah.
That I'm sure would have been both from a family perspective as well as from a business perspective, a fairly difficult time. You spoke about your mother, etc. I believe at that time she kind of stepped in and effectively took over, although she was actually a teacher, right? She didn't have any experience or background in engineering or whatever.
Yeah.
How did that transition happen? And, how do you therefore see the role of your mother in this whole journey of transition and going through very difficult times?
Yeah, I'd say that the first thing that my father actually did, which is I think a great learning for us even today, he had set up a very good team. So when tragedy struck, I would say that the team kind of rallied around my mother, right? My mother had a little, I would say, a small little plus point, a silver lining, if you like to call it. We had a technical collaboration between 1978 and 1983 with a French company. All the technical information had to be translated from French to English. And my mother, had picked up French as a hobby when she was a student, right? So my father requested her, to translate all the drawings and technical information. In that period of, I would say, 78 to 83, my mother had become familiar with the technology, right? She would communicate directly with the French side. I think that gave her a little bit of a running start, maybe, to taking on this job. It's something that perhaps women can do much better than men, because in a crisis, I was 6 years old, my brother was 9 years old. So she had to take care of 2 children, run the company. The company was in a mountain of debt at that point of time. So it required, I would say, tremendous courage, tremendous belief, right? To think that, she could make it happen. So yeah, I would say amazing story of inspiration. My mother did a really fantastic job.
Outstanding and extremely inspiring, I should say. Where did you enter? At what point in time did you enter, and where do you see the company today and the way forward?
When I finished my engineering, I finished my undergrad, I basically just went straight to the factory one morning and just started, as a shop floor employee. And so my mother said, you give it a try, see if you like to kind of, involve in the workings of the company. And she gave me a free hand. She said, just go to the factory, involve yourself in whatever you want, go and experiment. So I just kind of started working with a relatively, I would say, simple mind, without, thinking too much about, the future and this and that. I just said, okay, let me just do what I like doing, or let me try and contribute in whatever way that I can. That's how it kind of just organically started.
And did you face any kind of, see, you're obviously a youngster, right? Just fresh out of college and all that. And there would have been a lot of senior staff with a lot of experience and things like that. Did you find any kind of initial challenges in fitting into that sort of an environment?
I was very lucky because everybody in the company treated me with a lot of respect. They welcomed me. People were, honestly, I have to say, people were extremely nice to me. I honestly didn't have a lot of challenges in terms of getting accepted by some of the seniors. I think they also, we had a family kind of atmosphere. We still do in the company. I think the challenges were more in terms of how to grow the company from here, what to do next, where to invest money, what technology to look at. I think those were the areas which I found relatively challenging at that time, because, I was also trying to understand the market, understand, what our customers wanted, what, technology changes are happening. So I would say that was perhaps more challenging than being accepted into the team. So I didn't have the kind of challenges that, my mother or my father faced. But more in terms of, okay, how can we discover our true potential? It was more of that kind of a challenge rather than maybe an existential challenge of how do I just survive.
What an awesome journey. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I am truly inspired by the kind of vision and the long-term strategy that your father and your mother adopted, and I'm quite sure our viewers are also drawing a lot of inspiration and lessons from your own experience. From a practitioner, let's now move to someone who helps others to practice very well. Alok Sahu, who's an engineer in MBA, has started this entire journey of not just doing it for himself, but helping others to grow faster and faster. How did this journey really start? Did you incorporate Tetrahedron on day one, or you gained experience after your college and then got into it? What does Tetrahedron actually mean?
Just as usual, Odia kid from home and with the dream of passing out engineering. I did my engineering in 2003 and then got through a private company based out of Hyderabad, and fortunately got through a public sector organization manufacturing into steel segment. So in 2010, after working for almost 7 years, I thought of pursuing higher studies and got through a very good MBA college, did my MBA. And after MBA, my line has completely changed from, say, metal sector to management sector. By that time, I joined a company which is into consulting and advisory group in India, one of the largest. I came across a lot of Japanese people who are coming to India providing different kind of services, helping develop the manufacturing ecosystem, of course, with the government support of increasing the GDP contribution for manufacturing from, say, 15% to 25% that time. That was the target, 25. I'm seeing that the dream that was developed in almost 10, 15 years back is reaching to that level, of course. Will take some time, definitely. And during my engagement with a lot of companies, more than 500, 600 companies I worked, my job is to visit them. Visit to Japan frequently, did discuss with the Japanese counterparts, consultant, and actually understand what are the best practices that you can adopt from good manufacturing companies from Japan, and helped small, medium, and large companies to implement those things. During the course of my interaction with a lot of SMEs, I saw that there are 2-3 very basic but very pertinent issues to be resolved. One is regarding the way companies used to manufacture or look into the climate of manufacturing, environment of manufacturing, the system and style of manufacturing. Second part is about their inherent potential, which was yet to be explored with respect to developing new products, venturing into new market. And the third part is basically how they work with people. So these are the three aspects. I saw a lot of opportunities for this company to help. Then 2014, we started this company along with one of my batchmates. We have been in this company for last 11 years, and under this company, we have worked with more than 320 different manufacturing companies. We are basically industry agnostic, but majority of our segment of clientele from automotive industry, auto component, automobile. So that's the journey about how we started Tetrahedron. And the name is again very good question that you've asked it about Tetrahedron. The shape, which is a very stable shape, very stable shape. Tetrahedron looks like a triangular pyramid, having 3 triangular base and an apex. The 3 part of this triangle, that's one is about how do you improvise the process by helping our services. Second is how you help people who are working in manufacturing, and how you enable the technology. Combining these 3 things, how company can sustain, improvise the profit, reduce the cost, and various other business performance can be achieved. Hence the name Tetrahedron came into play.
Very interesting. I mean, you basically converted a concept into a name, and that concept and the name effectively drives what you want to achieve through this company, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. And you mentioned that, while you are industry agnostic, a large part of what you do relates to the auto component sector per se. How do you see that entire sector currently developing, in India? What do you think are the things that our entrepreneurs who are coming into this segment or who are wanting to grow in scale and size need to take comfort from or watch out for?
From my experience, there are 2 to 3 different industry category which brings the best practices into India. So one is, of course, automotive. They are the prime movers or the torch bearer of different best practices that is been followed in India. Second is logistics and defense. And third one is aviation, to be precise. Nowadays, other companies are also coming, like pharmaceutical and food industry. Specifically for the last 5 years, I would say, despite of we are having a lot of issues with respect to, say, the inclusion of GST, inclusion of, say, demonetization, geopolitical situations like Middle East, the outbreak of corona and all these things. Despite of the fact that we are having a lot of issues, Indian auto component industry or Indian MSME industry, if you compare 2019 to 2025, I mean, it's a 3x increase in the export segment. And why I'm focusing on export segment? Because that shows that what kind of quality that we're driving. If it is not qualitative, our products are not quality oriented, then definitely exports are not going to be there. And the second part, if we talk about automobile, almost 5 to 7% of the whole segment of export that is happening, that is into auto component industry. The future is definitely good. The product segment has increased. There are new products are coming into market and the opportunities are exploding. The only thing that we have to look into as an MSME in automobile component, auto component segment, that how to harness our internal potential to develop a system, to accommodate new product, improvise the quality, and of course the delivery parameters, which is very, very cutthroat in automobile industry.
Very good. And very, very deep thoughts that you are giving to the entrepreneurs in terms of maintaining quality and, making sure that the processes are absolutely flawless. Because otherwise, you really can't get into the OEM market, which is probably 80% of the entire auto components market. Now, how did you do that? Because, when you took over, when you came into the company some 20 odd years ago, as you said, probably around 30-35 crores kind of turnover. It was still very small. You were probably somewhere around between tier 1 and tier 2 kind of manufacturer. How did you break into the OEM market, and how did you convince the OEMs to actually accept you as a quality supplier and a reliable supplier?
So when I joined the company, we were 30-35 crores in sales. We were definitely tier 2. We didn't have a single OEM customer at that point of time. I think the very positive thing that we had at that point of time, as tier 2, we had built very good systems, very good quality control, very good manufacturing. We had already started investing in R&D in a big way. So the transition from tier 2, where we were suppliers to the tire industry, people like MRF, JK, Apollo, Seat, Bridgestone, that was our customer profile when I joined the company in 2002, to becoming a supplier to companies like Maruti Suzuki, Hyundai, Tata Motors, Mahindra, and all the others. We have Honda, Renault, Nissan. Now almost, there's no automotive brand that doesn't buy products from us. Obviously, it took time. It was a journey by itself. But I would say focusing on the fundamentals. Our fundamentals were strong. You have to get your basics right. Your basics are right. I think moving from tier 2 to tier 1 it's not that difficult. Of course, there's going to be a learning curve. They're going to teach you more advanced systems. I think like Alok was saying, the Japanese companies that came into India through the 90s, they brought in really a lot of very good systems. They brought in a lot of knowledge. They brought in a lot of systems, right? And so when you start interacting with an OEM, they will also teach you, they will also bring you up to speed, right? So we were very lucky actually that they kind of, pulled us up to the standard that they were expecting. But because our fundamentals were strong, we didn't find it that difficult. It's a bit of both. And I think that shows how mature really the auto industry is, that when they want a supplier, when they need something, they have the ability to get it done. So I would really say I'm very grateful to the auto industry as an industry. And that's why, it has such a huge impact on the economy, because these large OEMs, they do build that ecosystem around themselves. They build capabilities, skills. So they have a multiplier effect on the economy.
And one thing that you said is so correct, and it's not just true for the auto component industry, but for industry in general, any sector that you are in, sticking to the fundamentals, focusing upon quality and discipline. I think that is the three things that any entrepreneur needs to focus upon in case he has to go from one scale to the next scale. I think it's so critical because the world is changing, and the world is changing rather rapidly, right? And we're talking about changes, disruptions, everything coming across. And this China +1, etc., etc. Now, should we first of all see China as an opportunity or as a threat? There is going to be a huge amount of change that is really coming into our own manufacturing process and our own thinking. How is that trickling down onto the MSME sector specifically? And what can they do to tap the opportunities that are coming through this disruption?
Very, very interesting question and very relevant question for today's economic scenario, considering the geopolitical shift, India, Pakistan, China, Russia, and all this part. Should we treat China as a friend or an opportunity, or should we treat China as a foe or a threat? I would say that depends on our own perspective. Definitely the consumption of the product that is being manufactured by MSME specific to pertaining to say automobile industry is going to grow, because hardly 20-30%, not more than that, families are having vehicles, and it is going to be increasing. So if we are about to increase our capacities with respect to the quality and productivity part, then definitely we can treat China as a friend. If we are not going to if you're not going to make ourselves more competent enough to compete with the Chinese product, then definitely it would be a threat. I would say personally, whenever there is competition, productivity improves, efficiency improves. China we should look into as a part of opportunity. We have to work with China. I personally believe we have to work with China, not just because of the consumption is increasing, but because of the seamless business relationship that we have been creating with China is definitely there. I'm not sure about what kind of geopolitical situation negatives are going to happen, but we have to work with China. So China plus one is definitely going to go, and after that I think China plus India plus another one, that might be Thailand, or maybe Indonesia, or maybe some other Southeast Asian countries are going to definitely jump in. Earlier, 10-15 years back, whenever we buy a Chinese product, as everybody said that, in Hindi you can say that chale to chand tak nahi to shaam tak, it's basically a doubtful quality that we cast a lot of doubt in Chinese product. So China has transgressed from a cheap product manufacturing company to the low cost manufacturing. So there's a big difference when we talk about cheap and the low cost. Now they are moving towards a precise manufacturing company, specifically OEMs and bigger manufacturing company. They prefer to bring product where it is low cost, not cheap, not highly technical. And Indian MSME sector is exactly poised as today, thanks to what Aditya has told, the kind of support that we are getting from OEMs, that rigorous support to make the product more qualitative or more quality oriented, as well as the less cost, is definitely helpful for the MSME sector in India.
Okay. And are our MSMEs gearing up towards that, or is there something that is still lacking in their awareness or their preparation? Is there a threat that we'll miss the bus?
No, I think our MSME sectors are very well in a position to take care of the challenges. And if some companies are not prepared, they have foreseen what kind of challenges they are going to face if they are not prepared. And that is where, company like us come into play sometime to help them improvise the capabilities and all these things. So yes, they are very well positioned by the ecosystem, by government itself. I told you a few minutes back that the increase in the export is one very, very strong indirect parameter to measure what kind of quality product that we are manufacturing. It's really beautiful to see 2019 to 2025 3x increase in the export quantity. Yeah, so that's a very beautiful indicator. I love to say that MSME sector in India are very well poised.
So the transition is here, and our MSMEs are gearing up or geared up to face the challenges which the transition is going to throw out, right?
Absolutely.
Now, one more kind of transition. Of course, we spoke about the transition in the supply chain, in the global scenario and all of that. One very important factor is that the auto industry itself is undergoing a huge change from a polluter to a non-polluting or relatively non-polluting kind of an environment, from a IC engine to an EV engine kind of a thing. Now, that would be really disruptive as far as the auto component business itself is concerned, right? And how do you see this entire thing panning out? Is there a serious risk that 70-80% of our auto component manufacturers will become obsolete and go out of business? How do you see the scenario developing over the next, let's say, 25-30 years?
So when you talk about EV, of course it has to happen, but the way we are expecting, or the government has been promoting, by 2025, 25% of the vehicle is going to be EV and all these things, that will take time. Because our infrastructure, our ecosystem is not yet matured enough to handle both the kind of support required for running a successful EV transport system, as well as we are not yet geared up for the reverse logistics of the battery, which is going to create a very, very big negative impact in our ecosystem. Plus, there are some geopolitical conditions. There is lobbying, which is not told by many of these government agency from the oil exporting countries, because if EV is coming, then definitely their business would be there, and they are big player. They have good amount of say in our government policies, and there are also companies who do not want some time to promote the EV culture. They have their own lobbying ground to do that. EV, I would say it is at a very, very nascent stage in India, and the brouhaha that is happening because of EV, it is yet to come. And in fact, I would say that the MSME sector in India are at a very right juncture or point to understand that what are the things they can contribute to the EV market, because it is yet to grow. This is the right time they can do a little bit of brainstorming with respect to what kind of product they want to support. For example, EV, say there are different kind of batteries. And then, battery manufacturers are not there in India. I mean, we just are battery assembler. There is not a battery manufacturing. I think Reliance or some Amar Raja, they are setting up some battery plant, but there is not a actual battery manufacturing in India with respect to EV, lithium ion I'm saying. Wherever the battery is used, the shell of the battery, where they pack a lot of batteries, this is made of sheet metal. I'm giving example because most of the companies say that EV hoga, what will you do? EV hoga, what will you do? You can look into what are the products. And here I would like to cite, what Aditya has told. That rather than focusing on the product segment, you focus on the process, your capabilities, your competencies. Here we have to look into that. We need to change our focus. We are not a product manufacturer. We help them to say that you need to say that I am a precision casting manufacturer, or say I am a precision machining manufacturer, just like he has said, Aditya has said. And thereon you can open an umbrella or say portfolio product that you can think that can I go to that segment or not. And the company who are going to be impacted from this IC engine to EV journey are especially the mid segment player or the bigger segment player, actually who are actually manufacturing the core IC product like the engines, the components, the valve, which are a bigger player job. So I don't see there would be challenges. In fact, this time is an opportunity for these small MSME companies to look into that what kind of product and how they are going to be a part of the EV supply chain.
So what you're saying is that while there is a lot of change that is happening, our MSMEs are very much geared towards, adapting to that and excelling in that changed environment as well, right? Whether it is the supply chain, whether it is the EV, whether it is any other changes that are happening, our MSMEs are very much there and taking care of what needs to be done, right? That gives me a lot of confidence. But let's, as an example, as a live example, I should say, let's see what Aditya has done in the current environment, right? In terms of manufacturing components, which you never used to do earlier, right? You were a valve manufacturer looking at tires, then you moved to tubeless. Now you're saying, I'm going to do components for EV battery packs.
Yeah.
Now, how does that really work out? And, how do you get excellence in a completely different line of product?
It's an interesting story. As a tire valve manufacturer, we've been engaged with vehicle manufacturers of any kind, including the EV ecosystem. We were also a bit lucky because we are based in Bangalore. A lot of the EV startups are Bangalore based. We started talking to companies like Ather, Ola, and many other such, I would say, EV vehicle manufacturers. And we were actually discussing tire valves with them, saying that, when your product comes out, why don't you buy tire valves from us? And in the process of those conversations, I think we were a little lucky that, they kind of started telling us, hey, look, you're anyway there in this industry, we'll definitely buy your valves, but we're also looking for other components, and can you help us out with these components? So one of the things that came to us was there is a need for batteries to have a venting device. This is because when you charge an electric vehicle, a little heat develops in the battery casing, and this heat creates a pressure. The pressure needs to be vented out, right? Also, if there's a thermal incident in the battery pack, you need to have emergency venting, and this is like a passive safety device. Now, when it comes to venting, a vent is very similar to a tire valve.
Okay.
So again, back to the basics perhaps, right? Figuring out a new application, but as applied to a battery pack. So this is how this idea came about. I think the only only thing that we did perhaps a little different from the others, we started looking at patents because we wanted to protect some of our ideas, because we believed that when the market will grow in future, perhaps the people would copy some of the ideas we came up with. So we ended up patenting some of these ideas. And I think, again, we were quite lucky perhaps that the patent office accepted our claims and granted us those patents. So so that's been our little, I would say, entry point. And there's a lot of other components now that we're looking at. Again, the usage of brass and copper alloys in EVs is much higher than in IC engines. Yes, because copper and brass is basically a thermal or electrical material. So maybe, that's something that is helping us. We are already in that space, right? So again, we are just trying to play to our strengths. So again, if I were to summarize it, I think very similar to what I think Alok said. You're doing castings for, let's say, an IC engine vehicle. You have casting technology. If you're able to apply that in a different space, stick to the basics, stick to the fundamentals. Like Alok said, I mean, I really love that part of, Tetrahedron being, people, process, technology. So be strong in people and process, right? And you will be able to overcome changes in technology. So that's my little 2 cents on the
Very interesting. Very
on the
interesting. And
transition.
in all of this, what is the role that you're also playing in import substitution and make in India, self-reliance? Because that's really important, because if
Yeah.
India has to grow,
Yeah.
make in India has to become a big success.
No, there again, I'll say I'm extremely, extremely grateful to Government of India for really encouraging and understanding what is really at risk for the country, and coming out with policies to enable and strengthen the manufacturing environment in India. So Make in India policy, if you look at the way government thinks about it, it's about how do we encourage companies to manufacture things in India which were hitherto imported for whatever reason, right? So it's very important. I think the events of, I would say, the month of May, where we had this military conflict and all of that, I think that further should catalyze the thinking in India that the less we depend on, some of these countries who are sometimes our partners, sometimes are, they're also threats for us, right? We should catalyze Make in India. I think our dependency should be brought down to a level where we are able to trade as equals. It's not to say, I think like Alok rightly said, it's not to say that we should be against anybody, whether it is China or anybody else. It's about us having the negotiating power to negotiate on equal terms. It's in the world, everybody is required, right? China has an important role to play. The US has a role to play, Europe, Japan, and we are also there, right? So I think government is kind of formulating policy in a good way now. I'm very grateful to them. So they're trying to bring this whole ecosystem to India, and I think we are beneficiaries of that. And I think more and more MSMEs have these opportunities. The way Make in India is playing out in auto industry is that all the auto manufacturers, they are actively looking at what they call as tier 2 localization, right? They're going deep into the supply chain to understand, not just at the tier 1 level, the localization in India is very high, whether it's with Maruti Suzuki or with Tata Motors or with Hyundai. All the big players are deeply localized at the tier 1 level. But now they are, looking at tier 2 and tier 3, right? So they are also supporting this, I would say, Make in India initiative. They're also, realizing that, okay, one is the geopolitics of it, but two, it's also market dynamics, right? Tomorrow, if there is, let's say, some type of supply chain disruption in a foreign country, in a faraway place, for whatever reason, it could be COVID, it could be natural disasters, for whatever reason, they don't want their, sales to get hit by these kind of changes in the external environment. So in terms of, let's say, localizing the supply chain, um, even though we ourselves are tier 1 and tier 2, we also felt that we have to look at our own supply chain. And one of the raw materials that we are heavily dependent upon is brass, right? So brass being an alloy of copper and zinc. most of our products are made out of brass bars or brass wires, right? Brass, the ecosystem for manufacturing this raw material is not very strong in India, right? So we felt that we should now look at a backward integration opportunity to see whether we can bring the technology to India in terms of producing really high quality brass extrusions, which would not only de-risk our component business, but perhaps open up opportunities in the external market for us as well, right? So this is another, I would say, very crucial decision that I'm very grateful to our board of directors for approving this plan. Again, a risk to de-risk, I would say. So auto industry wants to localize for their own, self-interest, and it also works out, I would say, in the kind of the environment that India finds itself, where manufacturing is growing, auto industry is growing. We have a huge population. Our per capita GDP is, at an inflection point. So I think it's all coming together, and therefore the optimism of the next 10, 15 years.
And also the other aspect is that you started off by manufacturing tire valves, right?
Yeah.
Now tires themselves have undergone a change.
Yep.
No longer do you have tube wala tires, you have tubeless tires and radials and this and that. So many things have changed. Today, you are not just stuck to tires. You are going into, refrigeration, you are going into various other things, you are getting into EV and so on and so forth. So there is a transition from a perspective or an area of influence as well, right?
Yeah.
How did that transition kind of get planned and executed?
See, when I was appointed on the board as executive director in 2005, I was told just focus on internal capacity building up people, building up manufacturing capacity, getting involved in, expanding capacity. But I was not actually tasked with strategy and, what to do in future. When I became managing director, I was appointed as managing director in 2013. The role was fundamentally changed, right? Even though I just continued to be on the board, it was not just a designation change. I should really thank our chairman, Mr. S.K. Welling. He one day called me for a cup of coffee, and I was only 32 years old. He said to me, you were executive director, right? Now the board has made you managing director. Have you thought about what is the change in your role? What do you need to do now? Have you thought about it? So, as usual, I mumbled and blumbled and, said something. He said, no, I want you to think about it a little deeply. You don't have to answer the question right now, but come back to me. So, I slowly realized that the main thing I had to do was to de-risk the company, because at that point of time, we were a single product, single location company, right? So, as a board member and as the managing director of the company, I had to look at now, how do I de-risk this company, right? Because auto was going through, exactly as you said, a lot of changes, technology changes. Those technology changes, eventually we adapted to it, but it could have also happened that we might have got disrupted at that point of time, right? So the thought process was, okay, how do you de-risk? And in the process of de-risking, you actually end up taking risks sometimes, right? So many people would say to me, oh, you've got to diversify, right? You've got to get into something else. And when you get into something else, an unknown, maybe a new product or a new market, right? That's also risk, right? So in the enthusiasm to de-risk, you actually have to take risk. So then you have to calibrate that risk. So we started thinking, okay, there's no option. We'll have to take some risks. But how do we do it in a manner that doesn't rock the boat, that doesn't shake our fundamentals? So we started looking for component opportunities where we could play to our strengths. What are we good at doing, right? So there was a time when I used to conduct workshop sessions in the company, bring people together and, try and discover, start chatting, try and figure out what are we really good at doing, right? So finally we decided that, we are really good at processing brass, machining, forging, high precision, high pressure. This is what we are really good at doing, right? So then we started looking at what else can we do with the same skill sets so that while we are taking a risk, we are not rocking the boat, right? And of the many different ideas that came, we filtered it down to the air conditioning industry, because the data showed at that point of time that this was an industry that was going to grow and boom, right? In auto industry, people look at how many cars are in the country per thousand of population. That's a measure of, how much the auto industry has penetrated the market. Similarly, if you look at the statistics for air conditioner, right, at that point of time, it was extremely, extremely low. We were probably one of the lowest in the world. And given the large population that we have, given the economic growth that we were having, we believed that this would be an interesting opportunity. And then we started experimenting, we started prototyping, we started preparing reports, showing it to our board members. And that's how that journey started in terms of getting into air conditioning components.
Awesome. I think this some of the things that you mentioned, yes, you have to de-risk, but de-risking involves taking risk. But how do you take risk? You latch on to what is your core competency.
Yes.
Stick to that. Don't try to do something which is not known to you or something totally tangential, right?
Yes.
Stick to your core,
Yeah.
but at the same time, take risks which are meaningful risks.
Yes.
Don't rock the boat.
Yeah.
Keep the steady ship going. At the same time, you try to develop
Yes.
additional skills.
Yes.
In order to grow and move on. I mean, this is again something that people many times lose sight of. Jump into something that is probably not part of their core competency and get into trouble. When I used to be at the IIM Ahmedabad, our strategy professor used to ask us a question. Tell me, why doesn't BHEL manufacture toothpaste? Because BHEL was operating at a 1% EBITDA margin business. Toothpaste should give probably 10 times that. Because from every financial parameters, manufacturing toothpaste was always better than manufacturing boilers. So the question is that why don't they diversify into manufacturing toothpaste? So then you go back to say, hey, that may be financially viable, but I am moving away from my core, which is engineering. And I think what you said exactly fits into this whole question of why doesn't BHEL make toothpaste? I think so. Stick to the core, take risks where it makes sense, and take meaningful risks. But never ever stay in the same place, because the world will pass you by. And also staying with the entire theme of diversification, innovation, etc., etc. I believe you also incorporated two new entities. One is a future, Triton, future tech and climate tech, etc. Now, what is the strategic thinking behind it, and what are you really planning to do there?
We are actually dependent on this very volatile commodity, right, which is brass. Brass is, like I said, an alloy of copper and zinc. Both are extremely volatile commodities in the market. Prices go up and down like in a matter of minutes, right? So this is something that, we looked at very deeply, and we decided that we should have a business model where there is some kind of internal hedging between our component businesses and our commodity business, right? So by establishing this kind of structure where we have two component businesses, and at the back end, we have a commodity business that is able to supply captively the raw material to the component businesses, and at the same time have its own base of customers. I think we are stringing together a very nice strategy of growing and de-risking almost simultaneously. So that's how we kind of, visualized these three entities. So the interplay between these entities is basically that, right? And I think it's unlocking a lot of growth for us. If you look at our last 5 years, I think we have been growing at a compounding rate of 14, 15, 18%, right? That's the kind of growth perhaps that we didn't experience in the previous 5 years. So yeah, I think we find ourselves at an interesting spot right now.
So Make in India, diversification, de-risking, all of that sounds really great. But the key question that is always in my mind, at least, is that are our MSMEs really building up the kind of manufacturing capabilities that are required for a Make in India? Or is it just going to be relegated to being a political slogan or whatever, nice to hear, but really nothing much is happening on the ground? Can you share an example of somebody who's actually doing this and from the companies that you have consulting for?
Make in India, of course, last 10, 11 years, it has been a very bold move by government of India, and I'm seeing that a lot of things are happening on the ground, both bigger companies and smaller companies adopting it. And nowadays, I think there are few more support system are being provided directly by government to get Make in India certificate. Of course, some content of this manufacturing portion has to be done localized. Of course, the speed at which government is expecting the Make in India initiative to be taken care of, but it is not happening. Two major concern what I see here in terms of many companies who are not able to achieve that Make in India part is with respect to the kind of infrastructure that is supposed to be there from the government side or say maybe industry side with respect to finding technologies, with respect to doing research and development. And being a small MSME company, many companies sometimes are not in a very financial strong position to invest money in R&D. These are the two concerns that I see which is hindering Make in India.
So there is a certain amount of journey that needs to be traveled before we can truly say that our MSMEs are geared towards Make in India.
Yes, I think there's a very predefined way that how we are going to call a company Make in India certified company. Company used to call us that I want to get a certificate for Make in India. Then we ask what is the journey that you have, and they say that from this much onwards, these are the percentage of content of our products are being done locally, at least locally in India, and we are eligible for getting the certificate. But help us to get this documentation done to apply for this Make in India's in the Make in India office, and then we'll get the Make in India certificate, brand, logos, and all this part. Specifically on the metal side, it is quite possible. On the plastic side, it is also quite possible. But if you talk about smaller companies who are into electronics and electrical part manufacturing, it is bit of concern because the technology involved in terms of developing the parts and product in electrical electronic segments are a bit tight. Or say we do not have that much of infrastructure to get it developed. But in an overall, almost more than 60% companies, MSME companies who are doing local manufacturing are getting this Make in India kind of certificates for that.
So the journey is on. Of
Yes.
course, we'll get there sooner rather than later, right?
And more importantly, it should not be a case that I want to get a Make in India certificate just for the sake of certificate.
Of course.
Are we really doing the justice that we are actually helping the local ecosystem to contribute to this manufacturing GDP? Yes, that's to be there.
The other thing that kind of strikes me is that, especially in the auto segment, which has seen huge amount of technological transformation and increased levels of, I would say automation and process engineering and so on and so forth. You worked with Japanese companies and all that, and they have been the past masters in all of that. Now, keeping with the theme of changing technology and all of that, today we have IoT coming in, AI coming in, Industry 4.0 coming in. All these seem very sort of mind-bogglingly large and difficult as far as MSMEs are concerned. Do you think our auto component industry is somewhere there in terms of getting into some of these technologies and using those technologies for betterment of their own manufacturing process and product quality? Is it really affordable? Can I do something like that? Is there an immediate payoff so that I don't have to give too much of investment, but I'll get immediate return? Is there something that you can guide us on this?
I'd like to answer in two phases. The one is Industry 4.0, etc., and one is the TQM part which we have asked. The Industry 4.0 automation digitizations are called inorganic development. And the TQM, TPM, and other improvement activities, whatever happens, they are called organic improvement. The inorganic improvement technologies like Industry 4.0 IoTs, I have seen this kind of automation in my previous jobs. I think more, from 1970s, 1980s, the Russian technologies, the chemical factories, the steel factories, the fertilizer factories, they already had that kind of sensor available. We have to first understand when you talk about Industry 4.0, what exactly it is. And sometimes it's a bit sad to see that company when they want to do or implement Industry 4.0, I ask, what do you actually want to do? I mean, in Industry 4.0, we want to automate. And Industry 4.0 is not automation. Automation is already available in this market, like the sensors, the SCADA, the DCS, and everything. The biggest change that has happened from the last 5-7 years when you're talking about Industry 4.0, and the actual definition of Industry 4.0 is that up to Industry 1, 2, 3, Industry 4.0, the decision making has changed from manpower to machine. Hence, it is Industry 4.0, and you find the relevance about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and this is also not new. The first movie that has come in artificial intelligence was 1991, AI or something like that, right? Almost 25 years back. So the things were there. Now it has been bundled in a very proper way to help manufacturing company. It's very good. The second important question is to ask that, do we require to do it? And if you require to do it, what is the sequence of implementation? It's not like we get up one morning and throw money or invest money and get Industry 4.0 in our company. Is it going to help me? For that, we have to do our own due diligence. A company has to develop its own blueprint that what are the pain area, business pain area that they are having. It may be related to deliveries, it may be related to qualities, it may be related to manpower, the skilling, the processes, the times, uptimes, downtimes, and multiple other business parameters. And then decide which element of Industry 4.0. And when I say about elements of Industry 4.0, there are 9 different elements. Like, say your IoT system, horizontal deployment, the 3D printing and all these things. Which of these things are going to be relevant for me? If they make the blueprint, the first benefit is that very focused approach, very small, not so intensive implementation of Industry 4.0 with a lot of investment, which requires some time investment, but if you are focused, then it is going to be small. Say, for example, many companies, I'll give example of many companies who are into, say, continuous sheet metal processing industry, MSME companies. Why to go for Industry 4.0? The company has implemented some kind of visual inspection system. Earlier, they implemented visual implementation system. Now, when they had a stabilization of visual inspection system, now they are going to explore that what AI can do in that one. So, as I'm telling the implementation, first question is that should we implement it? That is to be driven from the questions the management should ask himself or themselves, that what is the pain point I'm going to address. Second point is that if I'm going to implement, there is a very structured, robust and prescribed way of implementation. The first thing is that you cannot automate if it is not standardized. So first, we have to standardize. A company has to standardize the process, standardization. Second part is, once they standardize the process, they have to automate it. After automation, they have to go to digitization. And after digitization, it has to go for Industry 4.0. So if you go from, say, without standardization to Industry 4.0, you are nothing but inviting failures. There is no need of speeding of this implementation. It has to be an organic way because the tools are inorganic. It has to be organic. People should understand the capabilities, and specific to MSME people, say there would be a little bit of relevant people required for doing the data analytics. You don't have that much of data genius in MSME company. So are they going to able to do it? There are few people who would be able to do certain kind of PLC programming or Raspberry programming as other programmings are required. Are these MSME have the people to do it? No. So it has to be the journey for, say, standardization, automation, digitization and Industry 4.0 has to be organic. It has to start integrating the blood of the company. Then it will be advisable. Otherwise, there is no hard and fast rule. There is no requirement of going for Industry 4.0 without addressing, if you do not have any business issues to take care of.
So the process re-engineering, process control, that discipline, standardization, that comes first, then all of these things kind of follow in a logical sequence,
yes.
Right?
And these topics are very fascinating. When you talk about this thing, we're getting very excited to do it. I worked with Japanese companies and they have done this Kanban system and a lot of beautiful tools, technique, flow management system. We as an Indian company, we always tend to have our own kind of technology to digitize it, and that actually brings something failure. So I actually give caution to companies that are you using the technology for your betterment or are you using technology just for the sake of technology?
That's an important point.
Yeah.
And in fact, frankly speaking, you mentioned so many things, right? If I look at it from an MSME perspective, this all seems to involve a huge amount of cost and investment and all of that. I say, why should I do it?
That
Is it really costly?
No. It was the concept earlier that it is going to, anything that is coming to the market newly is going to be costly. In fact, big company, they are also waiting and testing the water that how it is going to help them. They are doing their due diligence, the strategy. Then only they think, should they go for it or not? And I specifically suggest my MSME client that do not fall prey for the technology. You just think that it is going to be relevant for you. Second part, even if you're taking it, there are nowadays the frugal way. Indian companies are developing the Industry 4.0 complete solution. You discuss with them, find out the relevance and then implement it. So I would say, it is not costlier affair to implement Industry 4.0 if you are prudent about your requirement.
Understood. So it's not the cost, but it's how you actually implement it, right? You start from the basics and you build it up, then it makes sense, right?
Plus, bigger companies have their own way of looking into it. MSME should have its own way to look into that. Of course, the ROI is the prime driven factor, how much investment is going to be there. If it is less than 6 months, 9 months, 10 months kind of thing, then Industry 4.0 is a good part. Furthermore, coming to what is happening in technology side, like I told you about Industry 4.0, about say the decision being taken by machines rather than human being. Few companies, few automobile OEMs, they are now targeting to go for Industry 5.0. It's a new terminology for most of the people, but and then very surprisingly, I have worked with them for in 2019. They're planning how this Industry 5.0 is going to be there. Of course, non-Indian company, and the whole concept is that how they are going to do for the mass customization. Just like you see the laptops. I have this much of RAMs, this much of color, this much of size of screen, everything, and immediately it goes to the whole supply chain. The product comes. I think Dell has been doing it for last 20 years. But the amount of components, the criticality of the components, the availability of the components are very segregated and centralized in certain part of geography. So it's very easy to do the manufacturing. I mean, getting the material and do the manufacturing. But when you talk about automobiles, the components are more than say 50,000 different types of component, different types of SKUs. How to do the customization. So this is again a very big opportunity for MSME to be prepared. You don't have to take this or think that or invest that you have to take the technology now, but you have to create a agility or the flexibility inside your thought process that if the things are coming, then what kind of thing that you can explore. So whenever a new technology comes, few of the non-performing players are definitely going to be bankrupt or say closed, and people who are prepared, they are definitely going to get the juice out of it.
Understood. Now, also similar to these kind of things, new technology being adopted and all of that, even from a core component perspective or improvement perspective, there is so much of investment that needs to go into R&D, for instance, right? Now, as an MSME, let's say I have a 5 crore turnover, 10 crore turnover, 15 crore turnover, I don't have the ability to invest in an R&D center which will make my life very good, right? How do we solve that kind of an issue? Dedicated R&D center is not possible for, or rather I would say captive R&D center is not possible, right? So what's the solution? Is there something that you are seeing happening in the market?
Yeah, very well. This is happening, this has been happening, and there is a very proven infrastructure available in this country to help this kind of ecosystem where companies can participate in terms of doing research and development, new product development, new technology innovation, and multiple things. I think I would like to cite two government agencies: the CPET agency, which is specifically for plastics, the CTTC, which is for tool training and all tool and die making kind of thing. So they have center where they are requesting companies, MSME, to come. Yep, and do the research. We'll support you, facilitate you. Because, for example, I want to develop a new product, and I don't have a 3D printer, and I cannot afford to purchase a 3D printer 3 crores rupees. The centers are there. Go there, pay the rent, and use it. I mean, the ecosystem is already there. The only thing I request MSME to go there, speak with them, explore. The things are definitely available. The infrastructures are available. The mindset is to open to explore it better. Here, I would like to say one thing which you have asked me last time about the practices about PQMs, Japanese, and all this thing. Similar to Industry 4.0, which I told as an inorganic part, these things are inorganic in nature, and this plays a very important role. And without doing this part, you cannot go for R&D also, because the tools and techniques which help you to improvise, it also helps develop your own people capability, own cultural system, and all this thing. Without that, even if you have an R&D center, it is not going to be helpful. Coming to what kind of preparation the MSME should do, first we have to identify what kind of issues we are having. There could be multiple different issues, but the most important issues, like say for example, availability of manpower, the skilling issues. There's a very beautiful concept called dojo skilling center, and I told earlier that a lot of tier 1 automobile companies, tier 2 automobile companies, as well as OEMs are promoting that the dojo center is going to be very important for the skill center, and it is a very proven methodology how you can speed up the way the skilling methodology happens. It is primarily driven from the Japanese manufacturing practices, very robust system for the skilling initiative. Second part, when you are facing issues with respect to the profitability, then there are multiple different tools, techniques, approaches, and systems are available. One very simple methodology which you can definitely refer in websites and Google, like the lean methodology, lean manufacturing practices. which not only help you to improve the productivity of the people, but it help you to reduce the inventory management system. It used to improvise their machine availability, machine utilization, reduce the machine downtime. So it help you to improve the quality and all these things. Very specific focus when you are having a lot of issues with respect to machine availability. You go for a very proven methodology, almost 30-40 years proven methodology, which is called total productive maintenance, TPM. And a lot of companies are implementing. I'm sure that Aditya's company is also implementing TPM. That's a very robust methodology whenever you are having issues with respect to machine availabilities and all this. But though it is not only about machine availability, it takes care of almost all gamut of issues that your company has. You have any pertinent issues with respect to quality, then of course very structured methodology called TQM, total quality management. And it help you to improvise the quality, cost of quality, customer satisfaction index, new product development also, it helps a lot. Quality function developments, there are different systems to that one. And nowadays, mid-sized company who have grown from MSME to the next level, they are aiming to get this Deming certification. The Deming certification is one of the most renowned world-class quality management system certification, which companies are trying to do. So the framework, the methodologies, the systems are available. The MSME required to be a little bit more dedicated. It's not like these are intensive and it is going to cost you huge amount of money, but yes, of course, little bit of investment in time and energy and financial investment will be required. But it gives tremendous result to the smaller companies, so that as well as it creates a good amount of culture inside your organization for future sustainability. So it's a sequential activity. First, set up your system, culture and all these things, improvise your capabilities, competencies, then go for R&D and then patent and all these things. It is a logical sequence that will follow automatically.
So follow the process, maintain the logical sequence. Ecosystem is available, so therefore it's not necessarily very costly. Right?
Necessarily
That's
not
exactly
very
your
costly.
one message to the MSMEs.
Yes,
Very
very
great.
good.
I mean, I'm quite sure a lot of us wouldn't have heard about some of these developments that are happening in the ecosystem. So it's great to hear from you.
I would
and
like to cite an example that may not be relevant for automotive industry, but I have seen MSME companies, they are going to private colleges and government colleges like NITs and IITs and all these things. They have a beautiful infrastructure to support research and development. They are taking the product, they are bringing a product from outside, from China, and taking it directly to the colleges. In fact, I supported one of these very special material manufacturer from Ranchi to go to my engineering college, connect with my professor, and then they discuss something to take it forward. That infrastructure, you go to the local college, you take the product, you do the reverse engineering, you make your own competence with the aptitude that on what you are going to replace, what Aditya has told, to reduce the dependency on import kind of thing. And you have a new product in front of you with your own, manufacturing capabilities. So ecosystem is very much available. It's only about mindset that we open up, seeing that what are the things available and how to explore the available ecosystem to for best benefits.
Of course, Aditya, you are no longer an MSME, right? And therefore, you don't have the problems of cost and not being able to afford a dedicated R&D and all of that. So, what is your game plan as far as R&D is concerned, so that you keep innovating, keep going towards the zero defect, and obviously you've got lots of awards, but how do you keep sustaining that and upping the game all the time?
See, I would say necessity is the mother of all invention, right? I think the average Indian MSME entrepreneur is extremely smart, is extremely street smart, in fact, right? So, see, R&D doesn't necessarily mean you have to do research. When we say R&D, there's research and development. I think what is most relevant to MSMEs is the development part, right? How do you develop? You don't need to crack fundamental science, right? You just have to understand how to adapt, right? As we were discussing, EVs are coming, some technology change happens. How do you adapt to that change? So I would say most MSMEs would actually be doing development, because see, a lot of the entrepreneurs that I've seen in our little industry, a lot of them are technically very sound, they're well trained, they've run their businesses for long enough to know what they need to do and how they need to do it, right? The only thing perhaps, like Alok said, they need support of the educational institutions, the research institutions, consulting, companies like Alok's, to kind of catalyze and, crystallize something, right? They have the ingredients, right? But sometimes something has to make it come together and, that chemistry has to happen. So I would say that you have to keep your eyes and ears open. You have to make sure that there is a demand for what you're doing. So everything starts with the customer, especially with auto industry, right? In auto industry, I can tell you that you will get a lot of ideas, you'll get a lot of opportunities if you are closely communicating with your customers, working very closely with with your customers to understand what is changing, what do they want you to do, and you have to be flexible, right? You have to be ready to adapt and change with time. I think if you have that, you can succeed. I don't see, the opportunities are large, and there's more and more opportunities coming. So I don't see that as a very big problem, really.
So can you share with us some examples of how you gained by deploying your R&D center, and is there some kind of a concrete example that you can share?
Yeah, so yeah, for sure. See, basically how we started the R&D center is that, see, we were already doing a lot of technically challenging things because our product demands it, right? Our product is a little complicated to manufacture. We frankly, put up a separate R&D center. After I came on the scene, I did that. At that point of time, there was one thought process that, companies were given tax benefits, right? You get approved with DSIR, and then you get accelerated depreciation on the investments that you make in R&D. So we wanted to comply with those regulations so that we could get some tax benefits. And in the process, we ended up, setting up a very nice place. We bought a lot of very good instruments, and we hired a lot of young people to start experiments with those instruments that we had. In our company, we sometimes joke about it. We like to say, these are boys' toys, right? For example, we buy let's say a spectrometer, which can do elemental analysis of metals, right? Then we would go and maybe hire a young, let's say BE graduate, and give him 20 different materials and tell him, okay, make a comparative study between the brass supplied by A supplier, B supplier, C supplier, aluminum from A supplier, B supplier, C supplier, right? Start studying our tools, what kind of steel we are, just start, you have an instrument, right? Play around with it and first, start figuring out. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it typically is to kind of benchmark, do, we call it product tear downs. Pick up products from the market, see what your competitors are doing, tear it down, right? And try and understand how they've done it, right? So we call it tear down analysis, right?
Reverse engineering,
A type of
perhaps,
reverse
yeah.
engineering. So there are different ways. It doesn't mean that, you have to have an R&D center very formally in place. It doesn't mean that, right? It's just you should have that curiosity. Okay, somebody in the world is doing something different. I want to get into that. Okay, how do you do it? You start in a very simple, logical way. Like I said, you just break stuff down, start figuring it out, bring all your capable people, whoever you have in the team, together, and make them work on it. Give little assignments to people. Hey, you figure out this part, you figure out this part, you figure out this part, right? And create a bit of excitement, enthusiasm in the team. And in manufacturing, work can be sometimes very monotonous. So sometimes, this kind of activity, it kind of, creates a bit of buzz and excitement for people. Hey, it's something different from my regular work. Let me go and try it. So it's all about also how you motivate people, how you, create that excitement in the team. So in terms of our own R&D center, right, how did it benefit us? How did it help? When we wanted to make, let's say, our air conditioning products, right, that's where I would say our R&D center came to play a very major role in that development, because that required us to learn certain new processes. Air conditioning systems work at a much higher pressure range than tires, right? So we had to understand, how to develop high pressure components, right? Much higher than what we were used to at that point of time. And I think R&D really helped us. So one of the benefits that we got out of investing in our R&D center is that today we have 11 patents to our name. And it's also, formalizing that R&D center also helped us to acquire some talent, right? When you go into the market and, you're looking for, let's say, a test engineer who's only going to do testing, or you look for a design engineer who's only going to make designs. When you have your own separate space, separate R&D center, it's easier to attract that talent. We even had to make certain changes to our HR policies, right? Because, in the R&D center, you can't have the same policies as a manufacturing setup where people have to clock in and clock out at a very specific time. They have very, very, operational day-to-day goals and KPIs. Here, you have to be a little generous with time. You have to be a little generous with people. Give them time, allow them to fail, allow them to make mistakes, right? But in a controlled environment, right? So yeah, I would say that's the little
It's so
learning and
interesting
journey
that
that we
you
had.
touched upon people and motivating them, building a team, giving the right kind of skills as an important point. I mean, today you have what, 350 plus kind of employees, and many of them, I'm quite sure, have been with you for a fairly longish time. How do you sort of continually upskill your manpower, keep them motivated, so that it's been a very fast changing world. How do you help them to gear up for all of this? And what's your mantra for your people management?
There is no, I would say, single formula for it. I think it's about first understanding your people, first understanding the dynamics within the company, and doing, I would say, what works for people. For example, in people management, as you said, right? Everybody has a different motivation. For somebody, maybe their salary is the main motivation. For somebody, having a free hand to take decisions, that is a big motivation, right? For somebody, having a very interesting technical challenge that fires up their imagination, or they get excited, hey, I've got to solve this problem. So you have to be a little bit, I would say, you have to be a little bit hands-on. So in our company, how we do it is that I personally get involved in some of these activities. I like to sit with the team members, go and sit in the R&D, go and sit in the manufacturing departments, chat with people. So for them, that itself is a bit of a motivation, and for me, it's learning. It's assessing who's really capable of doing something, and who can be entrusted with a bigger, let's say, challenge or a bigger responsibility. It's like that. So I'd say that there's no one single mantra that works, right? And it's a work in progress, because see, employee motivation is a very complex thing. I mean, I would say human motivation in general. I think we are very complex creatures, right? And our motivations change. The things that we are attracted to change with time. So you have to be constantly, putting the stethoscope on the on the people front, and keep understanding what is it that what's changed, what's how the pulse is kind of changing, and then you have to keep adapting to that. I can tell you, we've had some successes and we've had some failures also, right? We've had some good talent leaving us also, right? So yeah, it's you sometimes learn from the University of Hard Knocks, as they call it.
Yeah, yes. And you did say that there is no one mantra. But if I were to generalize or at least summarize what you said, I think the one mantra that has probably helped for you and which could help everybody else is being sensitive to their needs.
Oh yeah, of
And
course.
that would be, if I were to pick out one mantra and you say that, okay,
Yes.
and be in touch with them,
Yes.
have the pulse, and then you act accordingly so that the team kind of changes and adapts itself to.
Yes. So I'll tell you about a very interesting people challenge that we faced. For many years in our company, we didn't have a union. We didn't have a workers' union. Suddenly, a union got formed in 2006. Right. I must have been 26 years old at that time. So I didn't know the rules, the regulations. I didn't know anything about labor law. I didn't even know whom to consult to kind of handle this union. But I would say we eventually kind of brought everything to a relatively good situation. And I think the only reason why we were able to do that is because I think we were able to communicate very clearly with people about what is our expectation, right? And what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. So I think um, if you were to ask me to summarize, let's say, people strategy at a factory level, right? I would say it's very important to be fair and firm.
Fair and firm.
I'd compress it into just two words, right? You have to be fair, you have to be firm. If you're kind of dilly-dallying, right? Somebody comes and asks you, somebody comes and asks you something that, let's take salary as an example. Somebody is asking you an abnormal increase in salary. You need to very quickly decide, right, where is that line, and then you got to stick to it, whether you get the result that you want or not, right? Because then it's going to affect the whole, because
Absolutely.
because people are always watching, right, what happens with X employee, and that is going to affect the others who may not even be directly involved in that matter.
Correct.
So I would say fair and firm at that level. I think that is kind of been our success mantra, maybe.
Very interesting. Just to sort of take it to a more general sort of a level, clearly when we talk about India is obviously now the most populous nation, and definitely the one which has got the lowest maximum amount of workforce, right, below 35 and all of that. Quantity is one thing, but quality is something totally different, right? And when I speak to MSMEs, the first thing that they say is, okay, paisa nahi milta hai. Number two, people are not available. Skills are a major problem, right? And I don't get the right kind of people who even knows how to do a welding, for instance. He may be an engineer, but he doesn't know how to do welding. How do you kind of tackle that from an MSME perspective?
Very interesting question, and I would like to, in fact, congratulate what Aditya has told about his company, how he is dealing with the skilling initiative, people motivation. And we must say that skilling is not just for the sake of skilling, it is basically for enablement of a person. And that has a very high relevance with respect to what kind of, I'm sure that everybody understands the Maslow's need of hierarchy. And the first first level is basically my physiological needs are taken care of or not. And most of the MSMEs I have seen, they try to address that one, and some of these MSME who are not trying to address that one, the attrition is going to be there, the culture is not going to be there, then they will definitely going to say people are not available, skill is not available. So the point number one, that we should not see skilling or the qualitative people development just part of skilling. It is more of a cultural building exercise that a MSME has to do, because definitely they are not in a position to hire and fire. They are not in a position to hire very high paid resources. And even if somebody goes out of there, then that person takes out a lot of knowledge and experience of that company. So a lot of risks are associated with that one. So skilling should not be looked into just part of manpower development. It should be part also. It should be part of our sustenance plan. What is happening in India? Specifically, predominantly, automotive sector, it has ramped up like anything from the last 7-8 years, from 2016-17 onwards. And I would like to cite this India's largest four-wheeler manufacturing company, who has made it mandatory for their tier 1 and tier 2 company to implement some sort of skilling center. Without that skilling center, they are not going to deal with that one, because that bigger company has understood the improvement activities, what is with respect to productivity improvement and all kind of organic improvement, whatever they want to implement, has sometime is going to hit the ceiling sometime. And the next thing that is going to be crucial for Indian scenario is basically skilling. And government has been focusing a lot of initiative on that part. Of course, few of them were not so successful. Few are definitely going to be successful after learning the mistakes what they've done from the unsuccessful skilling initiative. So a lot of companies are in automobile industry, they are doing it. The challenges that I see, that company are not, most of these MSME, they are not looking this skilling initiative as a part of the investment. They sometimes look it as a part of expense. And that's where the whole philosophical concept of how you want to do development of your company is missing sometime. And skilling is, if you ask me that how I am dealing with skilling, yes, we are helping company to develop the best possible skilling practices, skilling metrics, enabling people, developing the cultural things. People would be able to learn something in that company, and as well as they are going to continue in that company, which are very, very important for MSMEs. The point what I'm trying to make here is skilling is not difficult, it is easy, provided you have a very, very specific focus on what kind of skilling we are going to do. And skilling should not be looked into just like an initiative or an HR initiative. It should be a completely management thing to
Absolutely.
be looked into. Beside automobile industry, it is also important, of course, because EV segment you talk about. The companies like the largest company, Ola, which is doing that one, they are also focusing toward the skilling. Ether itself is going to focus a lot of thing into a skilling part. Almost all companies who are into say IC engine or EV segment or other product segment, they are focusing on the skilling very, very aggressively. And thanks to Government of India, because they are increasing the per day salary or the per day wages, now they are companies are very cautious that we have to pay, so we need more skilled people to be part of our team. Absolutely. And attrition is also taken care of if you have a proper skilling. Just like he has told, complaints from some of these MSME owner that people are not aligned towards my vision, or they are not working hard, or they are doing 2 punch 1 lunch kind of activities. Why it is happening? We have to ask the question that why the person who is working, the laborer or the worker or the supervisor or the junior engineer, should think about you. The question is very important, that how you are listening to them, they are going to listen to you in that aspect. What kind of support you are providing, what kind of culture you are providing, what kind of career progression you are providing. That actually help the person to think that, I have a proper, safe, prosperous career in your company, so I will be able to work more, dedicate myself more towards development of the company. So this is basically a win-win relationship. We should look into that skilling domain provides.
I think the key factor, the last part that you mentioned, is so important. I mean, it's we always say ek haath se tali nahi bajta, right? So if you really want to focus upon workers' productivity, and if you want to focus upon zero defect quality kind of things, obviously there is the other side of it also. How it's not just dependent upon the worker's skill, it's also depending upon what is the manager's skill or the MSME owner's skill, right? Which is something which is rarely it gets talked about, right? People all say, how to teach the workers what to do, but how to teach the manager to manage, right? How to teach the owner to manage, right? One of the things that I keep getting worried about in many of the MSMEs that we finance too, is that they are very good at a particular scale, right? He is good for 5 crore, 6 crore turnover. The moment he crosses, let's say, a 10 crore turnover, his own skill sets become a liability because he is not letting go. He doesn't want professionalization of the management. He says कि 40 साल से हम ये करते आए हैं, 41वें साल में भी यही करेंगे. So there is no, urge on the owner himself to change, listen to people, adapt himself. So how will he manage a 100 crore business?
Yeah.
Is that something that you get worried about?
This is almost case of 95% of MSME we work, that there is no second person to take care of the business. Second part is, it also has a very good positive correlation with the previous questions related to skilling. As I've told you, skilling should not be looked into just as a part of HR activity. It should be looked into that what kind of career progression you are giving a supervisor. I would like to cite an example of a mid-sized company. I think they were MSME in terms of the categorization with respect to revenue. I've seen the people who have worked, passed out diploma engineering, became the plant head in that company and still continuing for 17 years in this MSME. Automobile companies. So the success stories are there, but if you see the management role, their way of looking into the people career development was beautiful. I mean, they're a Chennai based company. They, just like Aditya has told, that you ask them to do the mistake in the control environment, appreciate the mistake, and again facilitate or say that you have to repeat the mistake or you have to do something. Keep on. The cycle has to go on rigorously every day with discipline and dedicated way. Then people have the confidence that even if I'm doing mistake, I'm going to be there. And they are ready for taking more responsibilities when the management is going from 5 crores to say 50 crores. The people are ready to take care of this responsibility because they have the confidence that the company is thinking about me, and I have a better future in that company. The apprehension of the senior management team that if I teach them and they leave and all this thing, there's a very proper statement said by our story actually. The CFO is asking the CEO that, sir, we are training people and they are leaving the company, getting better job. So we have lost good amount of money in the training part, skilling part. So shall we stop training? The CEO said that, do we want to continue with the same skilled people, or you want to leave? I mean, you want your people to leave after taking the training, which is better? Then the CFO understood that no, it is always good to train the people even if they leave the company. So that's the basic fundamental, that out of 100 people if you are training, or say 50 people, 10 people you are training, 20, 30, 50% people are leaving the company, but remaining 50% people are going to be the asset of the company, which is a very direct example of what Triton has done very well.
So managerial skill building is also so much of is assuming big importance, and entrepreneurs should at some point in time, after having populated the company with some good quality people must learn how to let go
Absolutely.
and take their hands off and not try to be a control freak, right? Which is what primarily you are saying. So more I trust my people, more they will develop, right? For trusting, I need to let go.
Yeah, many a times, because just by the sake of experience of this founder MSME or the managing director or the owner of that MSME, having 30, 40, 50 years of experience into doing a similar business, sometimes the instruction flows from the top. And say, for example, we want to do a minor improvement in that segment, the management decides, or the managing director and the plant head decide something to be done and they said the worker to do it. That actually doesn't work in favor of MSME. I would like to definitely suggest MSME that you take the suggestion from the MSME, but make sure that whatever suggestion they are giving, it is in line with your vision. You don't tell them the solution. In Japanese, they used to call it, do not give them the fish, teach them how the fish, but make sure that the fish he catches is according to your taste.
Understood.
So this kind of facilitation is the first skill I need. I suggest my clients that whoever is going to be your deputy, whoever is going to your second generation, proper facilitation skill is required to improvise your company's people. Second part is with respect to technical thing, they have to keep on working. You also have to plan for their own development, sending them to good colleges, with proper educational system, the technical part, the managerial part, they have to learn from outside. But the most important part that you have to manage is with respect to the people, because people are the core asset in smaller MSME companies.
Very interesting thoughts from both of you on the entire schema of people management, technology management, change management, and all of that. I guess it's really turning out to be a very interesting discussion. So, I guess we'll carry on from this and look at one important factor which we have not touched so far, which is where is all the money going to come from, right? The financing aspect, right? I think that is something which universally it is accepted that MSMEs have a huge problem on. Many MSMEs actually fail because while they have a great product and they have a great market and so on and so forth, they really don't know how to manage their finances. And many times they don't get the right kind of financial support. Now, let me ask Aditya that in the course of your 50-year journey, I'm sure cycles would have come and gone. And, out of these 50 years, 40 years, you've been a listed company, right? For like, if I remember what you said. How did the company actually manage some of these ups and downs from a financial perspective? Did you get the right kind of support from the ecosystem? Did all of this actually help you out? Who were the people who stood by you?
Obviously, as you said, we've been through some ups and downs. Most recently, after we started the 2 subsidiaries and then COVID came and hit. So, yeah, I would say that it's very important to communicate very clearly with the financial community. It could be banks, NBFCs, whoever you're working with. I think it's very important to communicate and explain to them really what is your business model, what is the payback period on the investment that you're making. I think it's about setting the expectations right. And I think very often when you're looking for money, for example, I'm, let's say, filing a project report with a bank, I will be tempted to say that, hey, I'll turn this around in like 2 years, 3 years, right? Because you think that if I say 5 or 7 years, maybe you will not get the funding, right? So I think those are the kinds of temptations that one has to resist sometimes and tell people, look, this is going to take a little bit of time. You have to be patient and you need to work out a product for me that works, right? It could be anything from getting a moratorium on your repayment in the initial phase, maybe a 1 year, 2 year moratorium. These are things that we have negotiated with banks. And, we have kind of interacted with them very closely and, tried to understand who can offer the right product that meets your requirement in terms of your funding needs, whether it is capex funding or it's working capital funding, right? So my advice would always be that talk to a lot of people. Sometimes a public sector bank has a certain product that maybe a private bank doesn't have. An NBFC has a product that the bankers in general don't offer. You have to be, I think, very conversant with what are the products available, how they work. My mother and I have a simple philosophy. We don't buy anything that we don't understand. People have tried to sell us hedging products. People have tried to sell us all kinds of stuff, right? So sometimes I tell them in a funny way that, look, I know how to machine brass. I know how to mold rubber, but I don't understand what you're saying. And if I don't understand it, I'm not buying it. Right? So maybe these are the small little things that perhaps MSMEs need to be aware of when they go into the market to raise money.
Okay.
There's an interesting story. When my father listed the company way back in 1978, ICICI, IDBI, IFCI, there was also something called Risk Capital Foundation, RCF, right? They were all NBFCs. They underwrote our IPO. Right?
Okay.
Right. So in those days, after our IPO happened, a lot of them had a significant stake in the company, right? Because only a small portion actually got subscribed by the general public, and the rest, because they had underwritten it, they ended up becoming major shareholders. So that was our first brush with the NBFC world, I would say.
You did have NBFCs as your shareholders as well, right?
Yes. Yes. And then later when they turned into banks, they started selling the shares in the open market because the banking regulations don't allow them to hold significant stakeholding in their client companies. So they sold out eventually.
Interesting. Now, obviously, whether it is a bank or an NBFC or whatever, as I mentioned a while ago, you can have a great product, but if you don't have proper finances, it's a problem, right? Do you see some companies actually struggling across? Do they really know what to do?
Most of the company who use touch base with us, they generally come up when they are having certain issues. Many times the issues are related to, say, cash flow, because they are not able to deliver in time, or maybe they have already delivered, the payment hasn't come to them. It's almost 70% company faces this kind of issues more often. Being an expert, you as an BSc Finance and specifically focusing for MSME, what would you suggest that how these MSME companies should focus or take care of the challenges they are not sure when they are going to face what kind of challenges, specifically related to working capital management, cash flows and all these things?
I think you said the right thing, because I think the working capital management is the biggest challenge that any MSME in our country really faces, because usually the cash flow cycles are very long, right? People don't necessarily pay you on time, or you don't get the right kind of supplier credit. So therefore, you're always going to be very high as far as your working capital gap is concerned. While there are rules like that 45-day rule where an MSME has to be paid and so on, many times there is a default in happening in doing that, and therefore it becomes a bit of a problem for an MSME to manage its working capital cycle. Typically what people end up doing is that they borrow at a very high cost to bridge this gap, and therefore end up becoming unprofitable at some stage, right? This is number one. The second thing is that when it comes to expanding, and this is a very fatal error a lot of these people do, that I want to add on, let's say, modernize a new machine, right? Or buy up a new machine to increase my capacity, or to retire an old machine and replace it with a new technology one. I end up diverting working capital towards purchasing of the machinery, right? So what happens, as it is, I am stretched as far as working capital is concerned. Further, I dig a hole for myself by diverting the working capital into purchase of a machinery, and the problem becomes really acute, and therefore I am not able to pay up my loan EMIs on time, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the things that people make a mistake. So when we talk about working capital management or cash management, it is a very important skill that MSMEs need to focus upon. Principle number one, make sure that you collect your sales on time as far as practicable. So selling doesn't mean that your journey is ended. Only when the money comes into your coffers is the sale process over. So you have to be very sharp on your collections. You have to stretch as far as practicable your creditors are concerned. So you bring down the working capital, take as many cash discounts as you can, let go of a little bit of profit, but you get the money upfront. It makes a lot more sense. Never borrow for a purpose which is not clear, right? People tend to borrow and put money into share market, and that is a strict no-no, right? So because you're diverting money out of a productive use into something which is unproductive. The other thing people do is, when they start to make some profits, first thing the tendency is that let me buy some land, which is a completely illiquid asset. So don't divert your cash flows into buying a piece of land, unless if you're trying to set up a factory on itself. That's a different issue. Unproductive land usage is something that you should avoid. Never ever divert your working capital to buying long-term assets like a machinery or a factory or anything like that. So some of these basic principles, if an MSME takes care of, they will never be short of working capital or cash. This is a very important thing that people have to focus upon. Because once times you default on your loan, your entire career, your entire future as far as the entity is concerned is finished. And when we talk about assessing an MSME from a perspective of giving loan, when let's say an application comes to us, what are those basic things that we look for, right? I think it's very simple. If I were to make it very laymanly, we look at who's the person. That means what are your qualifications? Do you have the relevant experience to run this particular entity or not? Do you have any past experience? Is there a family background in this business or not? Or is it something that you don't know, you're suddenly jumping into it because somebody has told you? Number two is that what are your values? That means, are you a person who's got a vision like a Dhirubhai Ambani, starting from a petrol pump all the way to one of the biggest moguls in this country? Do you have the vision to take your entity from zero to something significant or not? Do you have the patience and the skill sets to do this or not? Or are you looking for a quick buck? This is very important. So, the person becomes so important for us in terms of the mental makeup as well as the skill sets. The second thing is that what is your business all about? Is it something which is going to be a very highly seasonal business, or something which is towards the sunset, right? Or is it too much of a futuristic kind of an industry? Or is it something where the demand is very high or not? So, what is your ecosystem to which you are going to sell? Is it robust enough? Is it stable enough? Can I predict your cash flow for the next 5 years? This is the second part of it, right? The third part of it is that where is my money going and where is it going to come from, right? That is, what is the end use of the loan for which you have approached Profectus Capital, and therefore Profectus says, where is your money going to be spent upon? Is it going to be for purchase of a land which is not going to be used immediately? Is it for going from a rented factory to a owned factory? Or is it for simply taking care of your working capital gap because you are poor on collections, your debtors are shooting up and you're not able to collect the money? Or is it because you want to just have the money? And these four situations, two are positive, two are negative. So, we see what is the end use is that the loan that you're taking for, the moment you invest it, there should be some cash flow coming back to the company, right? Otherwise, it's not a productive end use. So, you want to take the loan, but there is no cash flow accompanying it, either in terms of a rental replacement or in terms of additional sales happening, capacity expansion, better products. Those are all positive things. So, three things: person, business and end use. These are the simple three things that we look for when we give a loan. The other thing which we spoke about earlier in terms of scaling up and all of that, at some stage people have to let go of control, attract additional capital from outside, say listing for instance, or attracting private equity investment and all of that. This is the other part that MSMEs are absolutely not very skilled about. So, therefore, they need a lot of handholding in terms of how to go and attract external capital. Many times what happens is the need to keep 100% of the equity stake with the promoter is very strong. But I always keep saying that you can have 100% of 5 rupees or 70% of 500 rupees. Which one do you prefer? Which is going to make you wealthier, right? So, listing sometimes becomes a very, very potent way to actually attract and grow in scale and size and beat the cycles.
That's a very interesting thought, because as you know, in our case, my father listed the company way back in 1978. And like I said, in those days, the NBFCs came and underwrote the IPO. If I fast forward to today's environment, how do you look at the role of NBFCs in sort of scaling up MSMEs? I think IPOs have become like the flavor of the season, especially with the SME platform now available both on the BSE and NSE. When is the right time, let's say, for an MSME to consider a listing on the stock exchanges, and what is your opinion on that?
I'll just go back to what you said in the right in the initial stages, that your father invested 1 lakh, but the total investment of 104, right?
110.
110, sorry.
Yeah.
So, it is 110 times leveraged on his own equity, right? Now, those numbers are fantastic. Today, it is not possible to achieve. So, if I have 1 lakh, I need to get another 4-5 lakhs from outside if I have to hit that kind of a scale, right? So therefore, external capital has become so important for us to leverage upon. So therefore, you have to have an open mind in terms of ceding control, correct? Not keeping 100% of the equity with oneself, as I mentioned.
Yeah.
But for that, certain very important factors have to be considered. That is your governance level very good. Governance doesn't mean having a high-powered board and all of that, but governance simply means that do you know the difference between your personal cash and the company cash? Do you depend to your company cash for your, let's say, to finance your daughter's wedding or a son's education, or some kind of frivolous reasons? The moment you start understanding the difference between personal cash and company cash, governance starts. So governance is so important for you to attract, because what are you trying to do? You're basically selling a trust to somebody. So that guy has to trust you to invest in your business, whether it's a loan or whether it's an equity.
Yeah.
The principle remains the same.
Sure.
Correct? So build that trust and create that confidence between yourselves and the external world, so that whether it is loan taking or listing, everything becomes easy. The biggest advantage of listing is the scale up, it becomes very easy, because we all have only limited resources from our family and friends. But if we have to go beyond that, we have to list our equity, give this kind of a platform for people to come in and go out. So you no longer, if you have a vision to be no longer to be an MSME for the next 100 years, but you want to become big business, listing is absolutely the way forward. The sooner you do it, better it is. In your case, it started early. Some people wake up a little late, but doesn't matter. One pitfall that an MSME should be very careful to avoid is that let me go and list because my neighbor is listed. I think that temptation should be avoided. You must only list when it is meaningful from your perspective, and you're going to use the public money in a responsible manner, in a meaningful manner, in a profitable manner. That is something that has to be also taken care of as well. All right, I think we spent a lot of time in talking about very serious things. Let's look at something which is not that very serious, maybe some amount of fun facts. I'm going to fire 5 questions at each of these two gentlemen, and let's see how they react. Okay, I'll start with Aditya first. 2 turning points in the Triton journey.
My mother taking over the company, creating our 2 subsidiaries.
Okay. 2 do's and 2 don'ts in business.
Keep investing, keep complying.
Okay.
Don't violate compliance.
Okay.
Never lose your integrity. Don't load too much debt in the company.
2 learnings from your mother.
Oh, so many. Humility, number 1. Perseverance, number 2.
2 books that you would recommend to all of us.
Okay, there's a very old book. It's a 1988 publication. It's called Maverick by Ricardo Semler. Quite appropriate for a lot of MSMEs, I would say. Built to Last, Jim Collins.
2 business leaders that you would like to follow.
I follow a lot of people. Rajiv Bajaj.
Okay.
Bhaskar Bhatt, Titan.
Interesting. And when do we see, following these 2 gentlemen, you crossing 1,000 crores?
Soon.
That's interesting. Very, very political statement coming from a listed company, not opening his cards at all about the future prospects of the business, but giving a positive outlook all the same. You don't have all those kinds of constraints. You're not a listed entity, so you can be a little more open, I suppose. Top 5 must do for businesses.
Maintain cash flow, focus on the people, identify the right problem to be solved, identify the opportunities lying outside your factory. 5th one, open your mindset.
2 failures that you have seen entrepreneurs committing.
First one is focusing on multiple things to do it simultaneously, same time. Second part is not clear about having what vision or the targets they want to achieve.
2 pieces of advice that you want to give to all our MSME friends.
Do not strive to be very perfect. Second part, make sure that you don't have to do everything by of your own.
Okay, so delegate. Okay, 1 mentor that you want to take classes from.
Fortunately, he's my classmate and my other director, Nitin Kumar.
Okay, a little bit about him.
Yeah, we both are classmates, of course, but background of him, he is, of course, very well educated. We are of same age, and he's a visionary. He's looking into multiple things what the industry needs, and we keep on changing our approach, methodologies, new services, new product based on his guidance.
2 things that you learned from your customers.
First one customer told me, basically from Bombay, that how do you respect the quality, that it should be like when the cultural quality specifically, that it should be like when you go to the temple, automatically nobody tells you to open up your shoes, but you open up your shoes. That is about the quality. And second part is about how to maintain integrity.
Okay, quality and integrity. 3 things that no MSMEs should commit in terms of mistakes.
Yeah, never cheat the customer. Make the proper planning before implementation. And third one is always take feedback.
I think we spent a good amount of time trying to learn from you gentlemen. I think it's been a real eye-opener for me at least, I'm sure. I'm quite sure our viewers also would have a positive feedback on the kind of things that you have shared. But I must say, awesome, sharing of information, awesome experiences that you people have, which you have given to us. I'm quite sure we have lots and lots of takeaways as far as today's podcast is concerned. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being with us on Progress Mantras with Profectus Capital. You can also tune into our YouTube channel and subscribe to it to get more such episodes. See you.